Hi, I'm Zoe and I'm going to be talking about overconsumption in the United Kingdom. First of all, the problem of capitalism and consumption in the United Kingdom is certainly a significant one. Individuals consume far more material than the earth can sustain, and businesses continue and encourage and exacerbate these trends, which is evident from the diagram on this slide, the image on this slide, which shows fast fashion in landfill in the UK. So, in terms of data, the UK population consumes 15.3 tonnes of materials per person per year, which is 20% more than the global average. Only 7.5% of these materials are reused, and this is a significant problem for the people and for the planet. And cutting material use by 40% would reduce the carbon footprint of the United Kingdom by 43%, so this is really a big issue in the UK. Reuse of textiles produces 40 to 70% less waste in the production of new clothing, and 62% of used clothing and textiles in Europe are incinerated or landfilled due to improper disposal. So, in terms of textile use, it is really important to reuse rather than putting them straight into landfill. According to the United Nations, global resource consumption has tripled since 1970, and per capita resource use has increased by 70% in the last 50 years. So this trend is not going away, it's actually growing. 9.5 million tonnes of food waste is thrown away every year in the UK, and a third of all global food is wasted. Every year, UK supermarkets throw away 100,000 tonnes of edible food. So this is really a big problem in the UK, which is, you can see from this diagram, which comes from Statista. It shows one of the many reasons that intervention is so desperately needed in the UK. 29% of women and 17% of men admit that they often buy clothes they never wear. This demonstrates the culture of waste and consuming which dominates the UK, more than other countries present on this diagram: India, US, France, Germany, and China. But why has this become such an issue in the UK? Firstly, trends and social media. Trends contribute significantly to overconsumption, particularly with social media. For example, the Stanley Cup was originally meant to be a durable cup, and now influencers have multiple colours and are demonstrating their extensive collections of something which was meant to be a durable and lasting product. And this is shown in the image that I have on this slide, which is the search results that come up when you search Stanley Cup, and the extent of overconsumption with people consuming, multiple of these. 54% of consumers use social media for product research, and this is a big problem as it leads to overconsumption and never-ending social media aesthetics, which are changed and new ones are introduced, almost daily. A second reason for the problem of overconsumption is business tools. There are various tools which companies use to promote overconsumption, such as planned obsolescence, emotional advertising, artificial scarcity, and cultural normalization. Finally, in my view, cognitive dissonance is one of the largest contributors to overconsumption. Many of these problems arise in a globalized world when we become so distant from the source of the products we consume. Due to outsourcing and shadiness over the source of our goods, many people don't consider where their clothes, food, or general goods are coming from. What are the impacts of overconsumption in the UK? Firstly, for the environment. As I said earlier, cutting material use by 40% would reduce the UK's carbon footprint by 43%. The environmental impacts of overconsumption also include deforestation, water pollution, and greenhouse gas emissions. Fast fashion producer Shein alone has produced an environmental impact of 180 coal-fired power plants annually. Food waste contributes to global warming and the erosion of the ozone layer, particularly when it ends up in landfill. Food waste emits methane, which is 25 times more harmful than CO2. The second impact of overconsumption is for workers. It leads to social inequities, with garment workers in low-income countries earning less than half the living wage. 54% of consumers use social media for product research, which leads to overconsumption and the exploitation of workers. Workers for Shein work 75-hour weeks, and Temu uses forced labour in regions like Xinjiang in China. So it is clear that there's a direct link between overconsumption and the exploitation of workers. Finally, there can also be a negative impact for consumers. For example, on their mental health. Pressure to consume leaves people to feel unfulfilled, perpetuating the cycle. Research links materialism to higher levels of anxiety and depression. We throw away millions of pounds of food per year, whilst many go without food, so it also exacerbates social inequities. What are the geocultural elements of overconsumption? Firstly, power dynamics. The United Kingdom operates in a position of power, being a wealthy Western state. It not only demonstrates an abuse of this power through its overly consumerist culture, but also fails to live up to its responsibility to act responsibly as a powerful nation. The history of the UK also highlights an already environmentally and morally destructive streak through the Industrial Revolution and colonialism. It has a responsibility to enforce reparations for these actions and not to continue neo-colonial patterns of destruction. A second geocultural element is gender. Often, women dominate the dangerous and overpaid textile industry which fuels trends and fast fashion. It is important to advocate for businesses to move away from exploitative practices like this in order to protect women worldwide. It is also clear that gender plays a role in consumption. Whilst my earlier source demonstrated that women contribute more to the fast fashion industry, men are more likely to have a more carbon-intensive diet and consume more meat. Overall, women are more likely to make environmentally responsible decisions in terms of consumption. Therefore, gender is clearly a significant factor to consider when designing a solution for overconsumption. So, what is my solution? I propose an initiative called Pause the Purchase UK. It's a multilateral approach that will cover 4 main facets: motivation, source, education, and lasting change. So before I get into my solution, I'd like to discuss some existing initiatives which have given me inspiration. In terms of fighting the motivation of consumption, Underconsumption Core and Project PAN, which emerged in 2024 on social media, are one of the first examples of the glorification of underconsumption, which is a very positive move towards reducing consumption in the UK. Underconsumption Core is more general, but Project PAN is a project launched by makeup influencers to encourage consumers to finish their makeup before buying new products. In terms of targeting the source, the 1995 Disability Act was the result of many years of campaigning from disability activists and charities, and it demonstrates how an initiative such as mine would or could influence policy change and governmental consideration. In terms of educating the audience, Fair Trade Fortnight was an event which encouraged businesses and consumers to consider where their products come from, and is something which I draw inspiration from in my solution. Finally, in terms of lasting change, Nothing New Month in Northern Ireland encouraged people to buy no new clothes for 1 whole month, and it is an example of implementing this into action and moving beyond just awareness. So, in terms of a description of my proposal, starting with motivation, attacking the toxic and consumerist trend culture on social media by creating new trends around underconsumption. I will implement ad campaigns to work with popular influencers to encourage secondhand shopping, restrictions in food waste, and other consumption-related issues. In terms of targeting the source, I'm going towards community-based activism, organising protests and events which fight for greater restrictions on businesses and stop planned obsolescence and increase the longevity of products. We will fight against single-use products, fight for greater transparency from businesses on where their goods come from, and make this visible to consumers. We will also ban the importation of goods made in unacceptable conditions and limit the carbon footprint of goods. Hopefully this activism will lead to policy change and can create a lasting impact. In terms of education, part of this will be done in my social media campaign, but we also want to target all different age groups. So we will create a scheme called Mindful Consumption May, which is a month where people are educated on how to reduce their consumption through different workshops across the country. Each week of May will focus on a different area: fashion, food, home and lifestyle, to emphasise the multilateral approach that is needed to limit overconsumption. Finally, in terms of lasting change, we'll encourage action in all of the above brackets, not buying any new clothes in May, and hopefully the change will continue beyond just our events. The stakeholders that exist in our world are businesses, consumers, the government and workers. Firstly, businesses will have to change their practices and they may face a reduction in consumers. For consumers, it will they can impact businesses in terms of dollar voting for more sustainable solutions. They will also feel happier, hopefully, due to a reduced feeling of not being or having enough. The government will feel a pressure to implement policy on businesses, and they may have a concern for how this project will impact the economy. Workers will hopefully see a shift towards businesses supporting better working conditions and higher salaries. Finally, the resources that we'll need for this is firstly money. Funding is needed to implement the campaign and set up events. And secondly, knowledge. Industry experts will be required to lobby the government and educate the population. However, the good thing about this initiative is that it does not require a vast amount of resources. It's mainly down to adequate funding and industry knowledge. So in conclusion, it's extremely important to consider the cultural aspects of overconsumption in the UK, as it is evidently something that exists on an extreme level in comparison to other countries. Therefore, in order to combat the problem, it is key that we examine the reasons that allow overconsumption to flourish in this location. As a responsible citizen and someone who has had the opportunity to study the geocultural challenges that face the modern world, it is my responsibility to alter my actions in order to mitigate my contribution to these challenges. Thank you. And as you can see here, these are my references that I've used for this project.